Welcome to my channel BornToReddit. Am I the a-hole for shouting at my ex in front of my daughters? I, 37M, have 3 girls, 8, 10, and 12. Their mother walked out on us for another man when our youngest was around 4. My ex still stays in contact, though, and pays child support. A few weeks ago while doing laundry, I saw red spots on my oldest's underwear. I asked her if she knew about it, and she cried and told me she tried to call her mom, but my ex didn't call back. She'd been stuffing toilet paper in her underwear, hoping that would work. I explained to her that periods are nothing to be ashamed of, and found some great resources online for us to review together. I took her to the store to pick out brands of feminine products she wanted to use. She picked Playtex Sport because she's a gymnast. After we were done, I decided I should do the same thing with my other 2. My 12-year-old volunteered to be part of preparing them, and we made a whole night of it. It was wonderful, and I learned a lot. I even learned what a menstrual cup is, and how they benefit the environment. The other day, my ex called back. I'll usually arrange a video chat and leave the room so they can have some alone time, and when they're done chatting, I'll come back in to talk boring co-parenting stuff like school, bills, etc. This last time, my ex was furious with me for talking about periods with the girls. She shouted at me that I was sick and perverted. Why didn't I call her myself if I knew it was so urgent? I could have called one of their grandmas, but my mom has dementia, while her mom and sisters call me a loser, because I teach kindergarten, so I'm not fond of them. My ex told me I was being immature and should have just toughed it out for the girls. This really pissed me off, so I shouted back that maybe if she wasn't such a deadbeat and answered her goddamn phone once in a while, she could have handled this. I brought up everything she does that hurts them. She hasn't been to a single soccer game, piano recital, or gymnastics meet in 2 years. Every other weekend when they come home from her house, they go straight to their rooms, only to emerge hours later asking me why she loves her new husband more than them, and what did they do to make her leave. My ex responded by saying I should tell them it's not their fault I couldn't satisfy her, and I screamed frick you, and she just smirked and pointed behind me, saying look what you did. When I turned around, my 8-yo and 10-yo were standing in the doorway crying. It broke my heart. I never shout, so I know I scared them. My 12-yo stormed in and started screaming at her mom, and while I appreciate her sticking up for me, this is not a battle I want her fighting. My ex hung up before I could fully de-escalate the situation, and let's just say the girls have been given free reign of the ice cream and limitless hours of video games, because I feel so bad. I even watched all the Twilight movies with them. So don't say I don't love them, but in this instance, am I the a-hole for shouting? Not the a-hole. Have you considered they were crying because of how you were treated rather than the fact you lost your temper? It's easy to assume the worst. Children are more observant than we give them credit for. That your daughter defended you right away pretty much makes it impossible to consider you an AOL. Looking at it from a pure logic standpoint, isn't it better they learn not to expect anything from their mom early in life? Certainly, you shouldn't have lost your temper in front of children, but no one is perfect, especially when someone is calling you perverted for being a great single dad. You also had no idea they were there listening so closely. Honestly, you are way too hard on yourself to even think you needed to post here. Keep on being a great dad XD. Not the a-hole. I'm disturbed that your ex-wife thinks it's not your place to talk about menstruation with your own kids. So I'm glad you broke that toxic thought process with your own kids. Good luck. Your ex-wife sounds like the devil that wanted to push your buttons to let your kids see you get heated sometimes. She's toxic, and I'm glad your kids have a chance at life with a good parent. Not the a-hole. Okay, you should maybe have stopped the conversation when you found it getting out of hand. But she knew exactly what she was doing. She saw the kids behind you and didn't warn you, deliberately, so she is equally responsible for exposing them to the shouting. She sounds like a terrible mother and you sound like a great dad. There is absolutely nothing wrong with a dad talking to daughters about their body, as long as they are comfortable with the conversation. My dear old dad had 3 daughters only a year apart, and we all ended up syncing our periods. He knew exactly what each of us preferred and every month would leave a big bag of sanitary products and chocolate bars in our rooms. Not the a-hole. Your reason for frustration is valid. She didn't show up as a parent and then got mad when you chose not to follow suit. I think it's amazing you were there for your oldest, something I'm sure she will appreciate until literally forever. Shouting isn't cool, but I understand why you lost your cool. You were being empathetic and caring for your child, and you're awarded by being called a pervert. That wouldn't cut it for me either. In a less public setting, without the girls, I'm sure your ex definitely deserved to hear more. However, I'm sure your girls know the truth of what's going on, and I know they know that you care for them. Not the a-hole. You didn't realize the argument was in front of your children, and you have every right to your feelings. What a situation. That said, your anger at your ex and her ways of poking at hurt feelings are not going to be productive at all. Your kids need to know that mom is problematic in a way that isn't blaming, and focuses on their issues with her, the neglect, abandonment, etc., not yours. Adult relationship issues. It's time for a talk about expectation on how mom can show up for their relationship with her, and in what ways not to expect things from her she will never give, emotional support, consistent physical presence, etc. It's also time for you to get therapy and anger management support for your feelings about this traumatic split in your relationship. You obviously have a lot on your shoulders, and anyone in your position would need help managing your feelings and stressors. It's a lot to deal with. You love your kids and you did the right thing about the periods. Your ex is an AOL and is behaving very immaturely. It's inexcusable that she's using your child's very sensitive state of puberty to punish you for what she perceives as you being not enough for her. How awful. Am I the a-hole for naming my daughter the name I chose years ago? I had my daughter a week ago. I had chosen her name a long while ago, because it had a very personal meaning for me. Before I was pregnant, my sister and I had been talking about what we'd like to name our kids, and I told her the girl name I really wanted to use. She complimented me on it, and then we didn't talk about it again. She gave birth to my niece 5 months ago, and guess what name she used? That's right, the name I had chosen so long ago. I didn't care, was a little annoyed by it, but I wasn't going to let it stop me from using the name. Now she's annoyed I used the name too. She told me it was weird that I would use it and that the cousins have the same first, middle and last name. I told her I wasn't going to change the name I had wanted for a long time, that had a deep meaning for me, just because she decided to use it after I told her the name. She said as the first one to have a baby she got dibs. I told her to get over it and it was a name anyone could use. Am I the a-hole? I don't think she's an AOL for your information. I think she's entitled to use the name, but she's kinda being AOL-ish when she knows how I felt about the name. Not the a-hole. She's TA on this. In fact, she's a double TA. Once for using the name you told her, twice for giving you ST and saying she named first so she had dibs. I don't think she's an AOL for your information. I think you're too close to the situation to judge objectively. Maybe if you had 100 sisters, you'd realize that this one is defective. I mean, this is only one issue, but anyone who could think like that has problems. I guarantee she drank in the bottom 10 of those 100 sisters. Not the a-hole. Just because she used it first does not mean you're expected to change the plans that she literally knew about. It's your choice. Using the same first name is not a problem for me. In large families, there is bound to be multiple relatives with similar or the same names. But, having said that, your kid will have the exact same name and last name as her cousin. Do not worry, she may face some kind of legal repercussion or confusion because of this. It might get confusing if they go to the same school, apply for similar positions. Anyway, you would have to check the legislation on your area, but this seems a little odd to your daughter and her cousin, not to your sister. I mean, it might make their lives harder. I have even heard of people being wrongfully imprisoned because they had a similar name or the same name as a wanted person. Not the a-hole. You chose it first and she knew that. If she didn't want it to be weird and she knew that's the name you would go with, she shouldn't have used it. Slightly controversial opinion, but everyone sucks there. She's obviously an AOL for using the name you had told her you really liked and that had personal meaning to you. She knew you wanted to use it and she used it for her child regardless. However, you're forgetting that you're giving that name to a real person. It might not cause problems for the cousins to share the same name, however you don't seem to be considering the possibility that your child may dislike having the same name as their cousin, or how your sister may act towards your child if she holds this resentment long term. Although it's her problem to hold the resentment, you have a responsibility to ensure your child is not unfairly treated. Am I the a-hole for telling my husband that his culture is garbage and I won't compromise by incorporating it into our family life? My husband and I live in the U.S. Northeast, where I am from. John moved here for work several years ago, from the deep south of the U.S. where he grew up, raised with Christian holidays, but never attending church. Coincidentally, shortly before everything hit, John's parents and his childhood best friend Dan and his wife decided to move here as well. This past weekend was the first that us three couples have gathered together since any of us moved here. We had a distance picnic at her house. John sat down 2-3 minutes after I did, as he was settling our kid into his pen in the yard with us. Dan and my Phil immediately started to jokingly rip on him for being whipped and doing my job of parenting our child while he was supposed to be allowed to just catch up with the 2 other men. I was trying to politely deflect when it turned to how mean I was for not fixing him a plate and serving him before serving myself. If I thought a certain dish would run up before he got to it, or if he had asked me to, I of course would have. Dan and Phil continued to brag about how their families do it right, where they handle the outside chores while their wives handle the inside chores, including the care of Dan and his wife's 2 children. I think it's important to note here that both currently live in rented condos that by their nature do not have outdoor chores, and both their wives have always worked full-time, as I do. The whole day was kind of wrecked by the start, and I was frustrated when John left with Dan and Phil to go for a walk and left me to do all the cleanup alone while also looking after our kid. I expected John to apologize when he returned hours later, but instead he got at me for making him look bad in front of his friend and dad. He brought up how traditional division of labor is a huge part of Southern culture, and how I was being disrespectful to his background by forcing Northern culture onto him and his family. He said he's been building up a lot of resentment the past few months that I make him do half the chores and childcare, since in his culture, women do the chores and hands-on childcare, and men do the fun parenting, the discipline, mow the grass, and bring in the cars for oil changes when needed. I was stunned, but honest, and told him Southern culture is garbage. It's bigotry. I lived in John's home state for 8 years, and I saw how Southern hospitality is reserved only for those in your group. Deviate from the norm. Be queer, non-Christian, a POC, a liberal, a non-traditional woman, and they turn on you viciously. Does every single person act like that always? No, but it's the culture. John is livid and says his culture is just as valid as that of other global regions, religions, and ethnic groups. So I am the bigot by not compromising with him here and incorporating aspects of his culture into our family life the way I would if his culture was Islamic or Asian or whatnot. Not the a-hole. Frick that. John better knock that existed off, or he'll be a single father soon, right? If you had to vote for the most a-hole story from all 3 to be president, which one would you choose and why? And don't forget, subscribe or I'll insert tiny little pieces of shattered glass directly into your pee hole.